Now is Joanna Grissinger, a legal historian and the director of legal studies at Northwestern's Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences. Joanna, so glad to have you with us in studio this morning to break this down. We just heard from President Biden saying, this is not over, but for the Supreme Court, is this the final word on abortions?
There's likely to be a number of new state laws now. As you said, states are going to move to put all sorts of new restrictions on abortion. The Supreme Court has said that abortion is no longer a constitutional right, which is protected by a higher level of scrutiny by the court, that now the court is going to be very deferential to bans on abortion or to limitations on abortion. How far does that go? We're going to find out. There's going to likely be a tremendous amount of litigation, and the Supreme Court is going to ultimately have to resolve, can states ban abortion even when it might lead to the death of the pregnant person? Can states ban abortion even in cases of rape and incest? Can states ban abortion? Can states ban or try to limit the ability of people to travel from one state to another in particular ways to prevent their access to an abortion? These are all new legal issues that are inevitably going to be taken to the Supreme Court.
Joanna, can you explain in layman's terms for our viewers, at the center of this, the 14th Amendment, which was ratified in 1868, granted citizenship to anyone born or naturalized in the U.S., but the abortion issue, it has to do with privacy. Can you kind of explain that?
Sure. The right to privacy in the Constitution lives in the word liberty in the Due Process Clause of the 14th and 5th Amendments to the Constitution. And so abortion has been in this broader category of the right to privacy that basically means things that the government can't tell you, can't make decisions for you, can't tell you what to do, can't tell you not to do them. And so abortion, along with contraception, along with the right to marry, along with the right to raise your children as you see fit, there's a sort of a host of privacy rights, the kinds of decisions that the government doesn't get to make for an individual that are all sort of belong together in the word liberty in the 14th Amendment and 5th Amendment.
So talk to us about how the logic the court applied in this case could impact other issues such as same-sex marriage or contraception, as we saw Justice Clarence Thomas writing about that as well.
Yes. So basically, it's a question of if you take part of the foundation out of a building, what happens to the rest of it? How strong is the rest of it? So the majority opinion tried to state very clearly that this was not going to affect the right to marriage, that it was not going to affect the right to contraception. But of course, in his concurring opinion, Justice Thomas said, well, it's time to actually start revising those because he wants to reconsider the broader idea of privacy and other unenumerated rights being protected under the 14th Amendment. So what is going to happen? Again, this is going to be an issue that's going to keep coming back to the Supreme Court. Certainly taking away this particular part of this broader right to privacy is likely to weaken those other aspects. Certainly people who are opposed to marriage equality, people who are opposed to legal contraception, people who are opposed to the right of intimate association as protected in Lawrence, the right to have sex and the kind of sex you want with the person you want to have it with, that those people who are opposed to those are likely to now bring challenges emboldened by the language of the Supreme Court decision.
Are there already cases working their way up through the courts that, could come before the Supreme Court fairly soon?
Fairly soon, that I don't know.
Okay.
Certainly there have been states that have been pushing back, particularly in the case of same-sex marriage, about just because you have a marriage is a same-sex marriage entitled to the same kind of rights as an opposite-sex marriage.
All right, thanks so much, Joanna.
All right, we're going to go to President Biden right now. He is about to sign the bipartisan gun